Good afternoon, and welcome to the Replimat, a weekly chatcast where two writers are going through Star Trek Deep Space Nine, episode by episode, from the beginning through to the bitter end. There's a newbie, myself, Tim, and a seasoned fan who is...
Me, Andy, with extra E, apparently.
and this week, we have been watching Season 2, Episode 7, Rules of Acquisition. Story by Hilary J. Bader. Teleplay by Ira Stephen Bear. Directed by David Livingston. And I didn't note down when this episode was first broadcast, but it would have been November 1993, I would think. Yes, yeah. The last one was late October 1993.
Yeah, so this is possibly the beginning of November.
Yes. Ish. So, yeah, 30-ish years ago. And there we are. And that's the formalities over and done with. Now we can relax and chat. Andy.
Hello. Hi.
Yes. Sorry to wake you with my somnambulant voice.
Oh, I am actually quite tired today as well. So if I do it's nothing personal. I just didn't get a lot of sleep last night.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Hi.
Tell us about your week then, if you can. What? You had a good week, my friend. As you drink your glass of Baileys.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. Good week. Wasn't bad week. I work Monday unusually. Usually I don't do Mondays, I usually do Fridays. But it didn't mean I get Friday off, which is even better because it now means, because I'm in my 10-day off actually booked holiday, as opposed to my enforced one a few weeks back because of knee. But because I managed to wrangle Monday work instead of yesterday, Friday, it means I get 11 days off instead of 10. So, Not complaining. So This time next week, my what you've been doing this week might be a way bit more interesting than my usual of worked, cell block H. But be a bit more interesting. But we'll see. Because I'm sort of mostly mobile now, so I'm hoping to actually get out of the house as opposed to last time when I was stuck indoors and able to do
This is good. Well, let's hope the weather stays good for you.
Sorry?
Let's hope the weather stays good for you.
Yeah, really? I probably won't. But it's fun. I've got raincoats. I'll be fine. Anything to just get out. But this past week, finished Only Fools. I've done those last 3 post-end episodes.
Mm-hmm.
They were still very funny. You know, like actually some really, really funny stuff in it.
Good.
But
makes it more worthwhile.
Yes, but so obviously, like the first episode, the first of the 3 specials they had to do a reset because obviously the whole point of the show is that these chancers, these lads who are just trying to make a living. But if they're millionaires, it sort of takes away the hook of the show. Although, personally, I think they should have just stuck with them being millionaires and found an interesting thing to do with it, you know, which is as opposed to kind of just reset a little bit. So obviously they lost their fortunes, went bankrupt, and so the next 3 specials, or the next 3 episodes, whatever, it's them doing their thing again. And it was funny. It was funny. But I am definitely of the opinion that they really should have just ended it where they're meant to end it. But I'm now starting, I watched episode 1 today, of a show called The Green Grass. Do you know of it?
Oh, Boise. And Marlene, yeah.
Marlene?
Yeah, I watched the episode. I watched a couple of episodes years ago and actually found it rather funny.
Well, I've only seen the first one, which is basically where they leave Peckham because the Driscolls are just coming out, and the Driscolls have it in their head for some... Boise swears it's not actually him, but apparently he's supposedly the supergrass that put them inside. But he swears it's not actually him, it was just a miscommunication, and he spoke to somebody who spoke to somebody. Because I think it's like he's on some like Freemason or something or other, and he just was talking to one of his brothers, as it were, and they spilt the beans to the cop, and so he became the supergrass, but he's not really. That's his story anyway. But this is the one where they basically legit run it. They're like, we need to get out of Peckham quickly. But so it's basically set up where you rise in the country house and you meet one of the locals When you meet the pub owner too, which I'm assuming you'll see more of him. But the next episode's called Rocky Start, which is obviously where you finally get the setup properly. But it looks like it'd be fun. I mean, there was a few chuckles in the first episode. Tonally, you can see it's obviously going to be a very different show, but that's not always bad for a spin-off.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to watching because I've never seen any of it. So with only
Cool.
Fools, I'd seen a fair amount. There's nothing. And I imagine after this, I'll probably do the Rock and Chips other spin-off, which is like a prequel one.
Oh yeah, no, I've definitely never seen that.
Nor have I. And I remember it being advertised at the time.
Yeah.
But just doing a bit of research, Jay Buckley is the one who plays Dell. Of course, Jay Buckley is In-Betweeners.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. Which I
knew
I
that.
think I knew, but I didn't know, sort of thing.
And isn't Nicholas Lyndhurst
Yes,
as well?
He basically plays the guy who's revealed in the last episode of Only Fools to actually be Rodney's real father.
Rodney's
so he's this like gangster type character. All the reviews say that he's terrible in this role.
Right.
But it's only 3 episodes or 4 episodes, whatever. So I'll watch it, but green grass first, because you know me, I like a bit of comedy because you've got to remind yourself that life is a bit daft sometimes. I mean, all the stress and all the busy, non-stop stuff going on, as you well know.
Yes.
You kind of have to remind yourself that as stressful as everything is, and as sometimes hard and overpowering, and just like, what's next? That kind of vibe.
Just want
how ridiculous life is too.
Yeah, you want a nice easy laugh that doesn't tax you.
That's why I tend to keep myself balanced. Just watch comedy every day, just something, even if it's just some stuff on YouTube. Just stuff to remind myself how stupid and silly life is. So it kind of helps keep the balance. So yeah, I've been doing that. Other than that, I obviously doing Subbox still, obviously. 175 episodes in of 692. So I'm getting there. I'm not even halfway, but I'm getting there. I'm quite a way off from the halfway mark, but I'm definitely getting there slowly. Well, one day at a time.
Yes, you don't want to rush these things, though.
Yeah, I mean,
you're not going to appreciate it if you rush these things.
It's a soap opera. You don't only watch it more than once a day anyway. Yeah. And it's more fun because obviously it's an ongoing thing, so it's more fun every day. And although, like I said way back, it was probably high drama at the time because it's soap opera, so heightened drama anyway.
Yes.
Because obviously it was at this point in 1980 still. I think we moved into 1981 now. I forget whatever. I think we just moved to 1981. It still was the early 80s, and naturally the way they deal with what they perceive to be real dramatic issues kind of come across a bit as a almost high comedy in places.
Right.
Don't think they mean it to be. I mean, you can see the bits where they're doing comedy intentionally because it's some comedic characters, obviously. But they try to deal with the real serious stuff, and you're like, either A, you're not doing it very well because we understand these things much more now because of the issues they're trying to deal with best they could at the time, but also because it's a very different time and they were doing their best. But it's entertaining, and that's what you want after a long day of work, just to unwind your brain a bit with just a bit of easy watching stuff that you don't have to think too much about. Beyond that, City of Vengeance, the Bishop book, I have put that as in David Bishop, not the character Bishop, obviously, for those paying attention at home. That's sort of on hold a wee bit because I started the Wizard of Oz books this past week.
Oh.
Done the first one.
Right.
Started the second one yesterday.
Are they all by Frank L. Was it Frank L. Baum?
Frank L. Baum. Kind of like the sort of thing you put on when you're feeling a bit ill, a bit.
Right, yeah, moisturizer. Frank L. Moisturizer.
But yes, all by him apart from the 15th, which wasn't by him, so I don't even know why it's in the collection. So I shan't be reading that because I don't, I don't want spin-offs. I just want.
As a matter of principle, I refuse to read the 15th book.
Yes, because it's not actually by him, so it's not really part of the canon.
No. Dear editor of the Radio Times, why, oh, why, oh, why?
How dare you? It's weird to include that in the box set. It's very weird. It's like, why would they do that? Because there's so many more post-born books that were published, but never actually. Well, I don't know. Maybe are part of canon. I'm not really that much of a aficionado of Wizard of Oz that I know if they can or not, but it's an odd why this one in particular. But I don't know, maybe I'll read it to find out. I don't know. Or maybe it's just a gimmick this company used to sell their box set of the books. Because obviously it's out of copyright.
Right, I was going to say, if the author of that 15th book is still alive, maybe they've kind of sort of sponsored the
Probably not,
box
though, because
box set.
well, I suppose maybe. Again, it depends on when it was published, because it could be out of copyright. And, when you're publishing stuff that's no longer copyright, so anybody can publish it, then if you're going to publish it, then you've got to give it a reason for people to buy your copy as opposed to other people's copies. So, well, Tim seems to have frozen, but no, there he is. He moved. I'm assuming he's there, so I'll keep talking. He's nodding.
I'm still here.
You're still there. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm still there. Yeah.
Yeah. In the corner, up in the corner there, because that's where you'd be. I don't know if you did phrase, but you did for me.
Oh right. No, I stood still while you waffled on and kind of fizzled on my screen.
Oh, there we go. Internet. But as we know, when it plays back, it'll be fine anyway. So.
Indeed.
Don't know why I mentioned it really. But yeah, so the first book was very different to the film. Very different to the film.
Is it the one the film is based on?
Basically, yeah. I mean, it's a story. It's the crux of the story, but as I'm sure you know, one of the main differences is that obviously, I say obviously, if you know, you know, Dorothy gets the silver shoes from the witch, not the ruby slippers.
Oh, I didn't know
slippers
that.
were only ruby because obviously 1929 when they made the film Technicolor, so they wanted nice red shoes because obviously it looks better than just the play. Whoosh. I went out of focus then.
Yeah.
Special effects. Because it looks better than just something silver on the feet, which just look like normal shoes.
Yeah.
But other interesting things is the witch, the Wicked Witch, is only in like one chapter. And that's when they go to kill her. That's literally the only time she's in it. She's barely mentioned that before that. There's a few, but nothing big.
Lovely.
Linda's only in it like in the last chapter, I think it is, when she sends her back. That's literally the only time she's in it. There's none of the analogues between Dorothy's life and Oz.
Okay.
So it's no inclination, no suggestion that it's a dream. None of that at all. But yeah, it's just based a series of mini adventures she's going on. I mean, they explore so much of the Oz that you don't see in the book, or in the film rather. I actually see more of it, bizarrely, in the more recent one they did, Oz, the Great and Powerful, or whatever. I think that's what it's called, with James Franco.
Nope, that must have passed me by completely. Sorry.
It's not a musical. It is okay, but there's a lot more of the book in that, even though it's a prequel. So like the different, not species necessarily, but different inhabitants of Oz. You see a lot more of them in that than you do in the original 29 film. We'll get back to Star Trek soon. We're talking Oz now.
Carry on. I'm just being interrupted.
That's okay. So, and you've got this really wonderful bit, and this is a kid's book, remember, where the witch in this particular chapter, and this is sort of stuff that happens throughout the book, where the witch sends wolves to kill Dorothy and that. This is Flying Monkeys is the last shot. And when they come out, Dorothy's asleep. The Tin Woodman's still awake because he doesn't actually sleep, and he's a scarecrow. So he gets his axe out and literally chops off all their heads as they attack. And when Dorothy wakes up, and it's just headless wolves all around her. And I'm like, yeah, I can see why this wasn't in the film.
Yeah.
Because this is the kid's book, remember? I mean, this is pretty indicative. It's not even just that. There's another bit where in one of the lands, I want to say the Winkies, it might be the Quadlins, one of the different lands anyway, where this is one of the land where the Cowardly Lion ends up ruling. He goes to help them because there's this huge spider that's like invaded their home, blah, blah, blah. So he goes here and the spider goes to attack him, and he just literally gets his claws and just rips the spider's head off. I'm like, yeah, I don't remember this being in the film either. No. So it was a fascinating read.
Cool.
It's interesting. So I'm reading the second one now, which is So far, it seems to be elements of Return to Oz in it. No dogs,
Okay.
but you've got Jack Pumpkinhead and Mombi. So we'll see how much more of this, if TikTok, for instance, I don't know, it will at some point. Because in the back illustration, have you seen Return to Oz?
Years ago, I
Okay,
remember there was something on Blue Peter about it because one of the presenters was in it. So
right, you may recall that they basically made this flying moose thing out of a sofa and moose heads and leaves or something. Like he's on the back cover and stuff. So obviously elements of this were taken for Return to Oz. But yeah, so that's basically what I've been doing really. Obviously
all
work.
right.
But yeah.
It's all good fun.
Yeah, so. But Tim,
Yeah.
dare I ask, how's your week been? Have you done anything interesting or
I had my flu jab earlier today, so that was that was fun. That was exciting. That was me and a lot of old age pensioners. So that made me feel really really positive about myself.
That's brilliant. Love it.
Yes, I heard the siren call for all elderly, infirm, and asthmatics. So
Yeah.
I went down to have my flu jab. Other than that, and the usual sorry saga of working and trying to establish some kind of meaningful work-life balance, I continued watching Ahsoka.
Yes,
And I
we
watched another
mentioned that
episode.
last week, but I totally forgot to mention it, didn't I? Because I
Oh,
said I'll mention that
gone?
later, and I
Or have I
didn't.
gone?
But what do you think of it?
So you paused.
You did. What do you think
Yeah.
of Ahsoka?
I am enjoying it a lot. It's it's slow storytelling,
Which is
but
fine.
I tend to prefer Star Wars told that way.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the problem with some of the more recent films is it was just a lot of very quick scenes and quick cutting and stuff, and it's nice to just have the characters take their time over things a little bit more. So the last couple of episodes, they're kind of two sides of a coin, isn't it? Really, so you've got, on the one hand, you've got an episode that was almost entirely Ahsoka, and then this week almost entirely
Ren. Ren.
yeah, Sabine.
Yeah, Sabine. Yeah,
Yeah,
Ren.
Sabine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like where it's going. I don't know exactly where it's going to end up. So
did you watch the Clone Wars and Rebels then?
I watched Rebels. I haven't watched the Clone Wars yet.
Okay, so the Night Sisters obviously still a new concept for you then.
Yeah,
they're not in Rebels at all.
so I'm going to once
a
I finish.
Very important part of Clone Wars. So
Right. Okay.
you get the end of the story, and then you can do the beginning and get all the background later.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Why not?
So yeah, Clone Wars is going to be my next. That'll be my next thing after I finished Bad Batch. So I watched another episode of Bad Batch as well, which is. Oh, sorry.
You're watching more Star Wars than Star Trek now.
Yeah.
See, you're making me ill.
Oh, yeah, well, it's just you.
I'm touching your code. Thank you.
Well, that was sort of wind.
Oh, wind.
That was wind, indigestion kind of wind. So, but if I've transferred my flu jab to you over the airways, I apologise for that. So,
well, it's not working because I've got a cold instead of actually just getting the. Yeah, it's fine.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So yes, apart from that, it's been another exciting week for me. Of course, full of joy and thrills. So I've got nothing else to say. So we should probably talk about the episode.
Shall we?
Shall we? Yes.
Shall we? Okay, Tim.
So rules of acquisition.
Yeah, newbie. Yeah. Tell me, what did you think? It's a interesting episode.
It is a very interesting episode, and it's obviously one where they've because the Ferengi are I've noticed that they either play like a comedy role or kind of play the sort of a rather dark, villainous, not necessarily villainous, but just sort of that sort of backstabbing, dangerous undercurrent sort of part in an episode. And so this was enjoyable, I think, because it played up the comedy side a lot more,
and the absurdity of Ferengi
without being an out and out kind of without being played for comedy. But it's just it was playing up those Ferengi aspects that tend towards the more comedic. And it was very enjoyable episode. I thought the was it the Dosai?
The Dosai, yes.
The Dosai, they look ridiculous.
I think they're meant to look ridiculous. I remember the very first time I saw it, I'm like, what, really? But I think that was the whole point, wasn't it?
Just paint them red and just they look like they were on their way to an American football match or something like that. I just thought that's ridiculous. But that aside, there was there's some very nice play there. I suppose the only downside at the end is that having gone through all of that and kind of proven her worth, as it were, didn't seem to have achieved anything from it, other than she was allowed to keep her secret, and so there was no kind of acknowledgement that Ferengi females were anything more than they already, assumed them to be.
We kind of at least saw that they were, but we just they refused to acknowledge it. No advancement made in that arena just yet. At least we know they are now.
Yeah, exactly. So I found that I thought that was a sort of just a slight disappointment, as it were, at the end. I know they list out these kind of qualities of a Ferengi or the expected behaviours of a Ferengi female, and it's designed specifically to kind of irk the audience as well.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely.
Or either irk or raise a smile, one or the other. But it's ridiculous, ludicrous. It was ridiculous, that was my only sort of, those are my only irks. Other than that, it was just generally a very enjoyable episode throughout, and it was good to have kind of Dax and Kira having some nice moments. Actually, I mean, they were very kind of just the Nagus, whether he's got a mask on or not, he's a dirty old man basically. And so it's, hello, darling, come here.
Come sit on my knee. Come sit on my knee. No.
And even 30 years ago, you'd have kind of gone, no.
But that, I suppose, again, that is kind of the whole point, isn't it? That it's not meant to be this guy we're seriously considering he's a nice guy. He's obviously a grotesque guy.
Yes.
He's meant to be grotesque, and the character, or the normal, I say normal in quotes, I suppose, all the normal characters, or the main characters, I guess, they know he's creepy and weird, and they just like, nah. I don't think so. Like where he went to Kira, pats his knee, and she's like, no. And of course the whole, don't do that. Do what? If you do that again, I'll... Because she's like, no, I wouldn't, because she don't get Ferengi. As that conversation between her and Dax says, isn't it? I like Dax in this. I like, because it's not really a Dax episode, but you get to see a lot of her character growth in this.
Yes,
which you didn't really
she comes off very well from it.
Yeah, absolutely. You get a sense of her better, actually, I think, in this episode than you do in a few of her actual Spotlight episodes earlier. That she's much more chilled and much more about the fun. You see, they've moved now, as you can see, they've moved away from that serene character they were kind of trying to present her as initially, because they obviously figured that's not really working. So now she's become this quite she's lived a long time. Dax says, at least, so Jadzia is embracing that side of her and the more fun elements of her character. Yeah, they are this, yes, they are all this, but once you accept that about them, they're a whole lot of fun. And it's like, yeah, it's nice insight. Because you could easily continue to go with this, she's this serene, wise, person who's lived X amount of lives. But they're like, or you could go, well, she has lived this amount of lives and she's realized how daft and how fun life is, so she embraces it all. And I think that works really well for her. Really well.
Yeah,
And
I mean, there is still the kind of, I think the kind of the sort of background thought of is she putting herself kind of at risk, as it were, slightly the way she engages with the Ferengi, but it's there doesn't we haven't seen a situation yet where one of the Ferengi has tried to push things too far, and she's had to get
physical,
forceful, physical, defensive, or whatever. So there does seem to be boundaries get nudged or pushed, and then if she turns around and says no, then they back off. It's
I mean, that's so
which
far
is good. And it doesn't always happen like that when people are in similar situations in real life, which is when you get the problems.
But so far though, you're right. She's got a handle on them.
Yeah,
and they clearly get it. But knowing Dax the way I know her, I don't think the Ferengi wouldn't get very far if they did try to push it too far, because Dax can handle herself. You'll see this later in the season. But again, from a writing point of view, the writers may not necessarily know this, or maybe they've already decided this, so that's all set up for later, that they know Dax can take care of herself. Or they may not be aware as writers yet. They haven't come to that story point yet. I don't know. But in terms of the whole narrative of the series, the Ferengi wouldn't go well for them at all.
There was mention of the Dominion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is a name I've heard, but I don't know whether I've heard it with reference to Star Trek or not. So is it?
It's not a TV show of angels, no.
I don't want you to give anything away, but is it something that is important for that? Is it something that's good that I picked up on it?
It's it's kind of important.
Good. Okay.
Kind of important. I may be underplaying this.
Okay.
By quite an amount.
Yeah. No, I heard it and I thought, okay, that
it's actually quite clever. Again, not to give anything away, but it's kind of. I mean, I've read the producers and the writers said, because obviously they've got some plan in mind at this point. They've started to set plans up now because we're in the second season, so now we can start to think ahead. So obviously, first season you're just trying to settle it and work it out. Season 2 is like, right, we can start to plan ahead now. We can see what we can get away with. And they said it was very deliberate that the first time the Minions mentioned is going to be in such an absurd comedy, silly episode, because you, as a viewer, you won't necessarily appreciate not the importance of it, but no, you wouldn't appreciate the gravity, I suppose, really, of what it's about, because it's just like, it's just somebody who's going to do some trade with a Ferengi, which obviously that's what it's been set up as here.
Yeah.
If you want to do trade with the Dominion, so it just seems to be a Ferengi thing. So it's a very deliberate choice on the writer's part to say, right, but put it in here, because although they mention it, it's not like it's a throwaway line. They obviously have a discussion about it several times, so you definitely kind of register. But it does feel. I mean, obviously you picked it up because obviously you've heard of them from somewhere before.
I think so. Yeah, I wasn't sure whether it was in reference to this or something else.
It probably was. But if you hadn't heard of it before, like if you was coming in new and knew nothing of Star Trek, like say you 30 years ago, then you probably would have only just assumed it's just this Ferengi thing. You wouldn't get the full context or even a hint of full context. But yeah, so yeah, watch out for that.
Okay.
We'll definitely be hearing about the Dominion again.
Okay. Good.
How and why, I will not say.
No, that's fair enough. It's
By the
good
end
to
of the
know that my
season, you will
spidey
know.
senses aren't completely
No, they're tingling.
dulled to these
Well,
things.
Peter Tingle is perfectly good, as I would say nowadays. The Peter Tingle, which apparently fans don't like. I think it's
Peter
kind of
Tingle.
funny. Yeah, because that's in the films.
Right. Okay.
Because they haven't once mentioned in like the MCU Spider-Man films the spider sense, but he obviously has it. But so people keep calling it the Peter Tingle, and he's like, "Will you stop calling it that?"
Just
Which,
roll.
and obviously, certain older school fans are a bit like, "He's got spider sense, not a Peter Tingle." What the? It's like, well, I think in the real world of the MCU as a narrative, it makes more sense that they've come up with a silly phrase like that than some branding. You know,
Hmm.
I mean, what's next? Spidey sense, spider wings. You know, what I mean, they wouldn't in the real world. You really wouldn't do that. Peter
Yeah.
Tingle is much more a natural thing to call it. I think his aunt calls it for that first, Aunt May, and he's like, "What?" and it just sort of runs. But yeah. Anyway, never mind Spider Man. Yeah, so it's a fun episode. I
Yeah.
like it. Whenever I watch it, I'm always of two minds of. I mean, obviously, there's a comedy element of the whole Pell thing. Of she's a female, has to hide as a male to get by in this world, which I think it's commentary on, certain things about humanity's past. Because don't forget, there was a time when women in the Western world, at least, were nothing.
Yeah.
Basically,
No, completely.
they were second-rate citizens. They had no power. They couldn't do business.
Yeah.
And you hear stories of women who had to dress up basically as men to try and be accepted.
From
And you
a,
sort of,
from an author perspective, there's a long history. George Eliot, for example. George Eliot is still generally known as George Eliot, not Mary Ann Evans.
I did not know this.
Ah,
There we go. Proves your point.
yes.
Well, there we go. Yeah. So
I
again,
did.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
you see that
I
it's like,
noticed recently. Only noticed recently that East Lynne, which is a famous kind of pot boiler novel from the 1860s, written by Mrs. Henry Wood, that now it's being published under Ellen Wood. So just little things like that.
well,
It's
it's even in the obviously
hide behind your husband's name, whatever.
yeah, even the Leffer Stewart stuff. I deliberately touch on that, as you know, you've obviously been there, where back in the 70s, women were not, even if they had a doctorate, they were just always called Miss or Mrs.
Hmm.
People just wouldn't acknowledge, oh, this is Dr. Travers. They would acknowledge it, which is, of course, why I make a huge thing of that as she gets older.
Yeah.
And, that's why I make sure when I'm editing, I mean, obviously the readers don't see it because it's gone by the time I guessed it. But if a writer, when they've sent the book to me, I've said Dr. Travers, because the Brigadier would be respectful. It's like, we think this because obviously we like the Brigadier, we want him to be. But have you not watched season 7? Dr. Shaw, she's a full doctorate of many doctorates actually, but he only ever calls her Miss Shaw.
Yeah.
Because it's the 1970s and that's just the culture. Because women, again, they had to fight, really fight to be recognized as equals.
Yeah.
So,
It tends to be other scientists that call her Dr. Shaw when anyone does. It does happen occasionally, but yes, you're right. It's
make
more
it
than
a big
often
point.
it's Liz or Miss Shaw. So
So, but yeah, so there's so many instances where women have had to try to take on a masculine role to be accepted. I mean, you see it, gosh, you see it actually, I don't know, maybe, actually just going to come from a male point of view because I've never been a woman, but even in New Who, whenever you see these like high-powered, strong women villains against the Doctor in the modern age, and there's quite a few examples, in what's it called? The first one Donna returns in properly.
oh, well, Partners in Crime.
Yes. what's the name character? The Sarah Lancashire character, whoever
yes,
plays a character in a male, very, of course, it's feminized to a point, but it's still a very masculine suit.
Yeah.
Mrs. Wormwood too in Sarah Jane, and it's happened a few more times too. And again, I can only see this from a male point of view because I've not been a woman, but I look at it that it seems to me that even today, if they feel like they've got to dress up kind of like a man in that kind of environment to be respected, I don't. But then again, maybe that's not really what they're feeling at all. They're just like, no, why should men only have to wear? Why should men just wear suits? Why can't we wear suits? So you don't know, but it does seem to me visually that this battle still goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I see it every day at work. You can see the battle of the sexes still is a big thing where women, they do say women have to fight harder to be acknowledged in a predominantly male industry of some sort, and that's what this story is about. Very, very, very about.
Yeah.
So it's a shame 30 years on, because I imagine that was quite topical at the time. Never mind historically topical, but topical in '93. And here we are 30 years on, and still, again, we've said this in a few other episodes as well, where as much as things have changed, a lot of things still have yet to change, or not changing fast enough, possibly. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like episodes like this where they kind of still are relevant in that sense. Although I dislike them because they are still relevant. It's like, why are they still relevant? Surely they shouldn't be relevant
after all this time.
It's like whenever you deal with any Star Trek show that deals with race or stuff, and you're like, why is this still so bloody relevant? You'd think we would have got past this in 30 years. So, yeah. Watching old shows can be a bit frustrating like that.
The the Nagus. I noticed
he's
having
one of your favourite characters, isn't he?
He's having appeared in season 1 and having all that sort of fuss and sort of pomp and circumstance around his kind of position.
Yeah.
This time it was much more kind of low key. It's almost like because of that episode, he's kind of accepted within the kind of Ferengi sort of setup, as it were, around Deep Space Nine. So there's a lot less. Although there's still sort of all the like the toadying and the scraping and the bowing, it's a lot less. A lot less kind of worshipping at his feet, kind of thing, and more about him sort of interacting with him as almost as a regular character. So, and I think that helps this episode as well. It's not we don't have all of that baggage because that it's already been done, so they can crack.
Yeah.
They could crack straight on.
Like anybody can see me because I'm up in the corner, so you can't see me. I'm up in this corner.
Well, I can see you next to me on my screen.
You can.
Yes.
But when it gets played back, I'll be where your head is now. I'll be just in the corner by there. So I'll be pointing down. If I point down, it's so difficult to do when you're watching yourself not in the mirror. If I point down there, now I'm pointing at your head.
Right. Okay.
It plays back because I found this thing where basically whoever's not talking goes up to the up here. So
I thought they disappeared completely.
No, we did that for a while, but then
I was going to say because when I'm not talking,
I was like, oh, what's this do? Just because when I first saw it, I thought that just meant somebody gets stuck in the top corner all the time.
Right.
But it turns out it's the same thing as what it used to do, except for now, when the person in the corner up here, when they're not talking, that's what they are. When they start talking, they get the mic, they get full screen. The other person goes up in the corner, which is quite cool.
Oh, I thought I was off screen completely, so I wipe my nose and stuff, and I didn't realise I'd still be on screen. So
no, you're up in the corner wiping your nose. It's
wiping my nose in the corner. Okay.
I mean, if they're watching on the phone, then they probably won't even barely see you, so it's all right.
That's all right then. Fine.
If it's on YouTube, they'll be like, "Oh, I can see what he's doing." I can see what he's doing. But yeah, you're right about the Negus.
Yeah,
It's almost like all that pomp and circumstance in the first time is there. Although I was going to say it's only there for us really to get across to us, the viewer, how important and big he is. And now that we know him as a character, we can just forego that crap and just he's part of the
because
status quo almost.
people were talking about him as Zek. I don't actually remember him having that name in
Yeah,
the
he had the
first
name,
time.
but they just
But
always called Grand Negus.
yeah, it was all very reverent. He's the Negus, and now he's Zek, or he's Negus Zek.
I
Or
wonder
whatever.
if that could imply, because I don't think it's mentioned, or it might be, that when he first came to DS9 last year, that was like the first time he really left Ferengi because he doesn't really need to before. But now you've got the Gamma Quadrant thing, wormhole, big important, so I've got to go there myself. And I get maybe the sense could be that since then he's actually been off-road a lot more and been interacting on a more personal level and up front with business and stuff. And so even the Ferengi have become a bit more familiar and he's not that standoffish. If you see if you see somebody who's in power all the time, then they kind of just become another person, don't they?
Yes, it
So
loses its mystique.
maybe that's what's happened, yeah, in the year since, maybe.
I mean, and again, it's not a complaint. It worked very well for the storytelling and particularly for the humour. So it was all positive.
Definitely. Yes, one of those episodes, I think there's not a lot to be said about it because there's a fairly straightforward story. There's a few interesting points. Dominion, Pell, the Dozai looking very odd. And some nice Kira Dax moments.
Yeah, there were. Yeah,
there was no B story or anything, so there's no
Cisco's bit towards the beginning as well was quite nice as well.
Really good, yeah.
Yeah,
with
just
Sec, where he's like, "Oh, your negotiation tactics are really good."
Yeah,
and when he
just
walks
they're
off,
looking very, very happy with himself.
yeah,
so,
then he walks off after trying to make another pass at Kira, and she just looks at Cisco like, and he's just there beaming like, But yeah, that was a really good scene. I did actually watch it. I thought, yeah, I like Cisco this season. Again, we don't see, I'm not saying we don't see a lot of Cisco, but again, I don't think he's really led an episode since episode 1, has he, really?
No, but
it's not been an episode about him.
He's a good, solid presence that kind of underpins the whole thing, and that's important. There's still no doubt that he's like he's
in charge,
the lead character, because he's the building block on which everyone else rests. So that's there's no doubt about that.
I don't know, because I mean, obviously he's billed as a lead character, but I think this show, this season in particular, although I think it's true of most of last season, it's much more of an ensemble show than because Next Gen, of course, essentially followed the same basic plan as original series of 3 lead characters. In this case, obviously, it was Picard, Riker, and Data. All the others are important. They all have their episodes. It's always like a focus on one character.
Second tier characters, aren't they?
Whereas in this show, maybe it is deliberate actually, that because we've never had an episode directly about him yet. I'm saying that there must have been one. There must have been. I suppose kind of the one when you get a big Jake episode. That's usually about Cisco as well.
Yeah, and we had the episode. We had the Dax episode recently, which we kind of agreed on the chat afterwards.
Yeah,
it was as much a Cisco episode as it was a Dax episode.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So he's contributing and he's having some good scenes, and I do think he's overall better written and played this season than he was in the first season.
Agreed.
But there hasn't been an episode yet, particularly where he kind of gets singled out on his own. And,
that's really gone into who he is, what makes him tick.
He has a particular problem that he has to resolve himself.
So you're right. Which is interesting because you sort of don't realise it when you're watching it.
Hmm.
You don't. You just sort of go with it because he's just, as you say, he's just always there, involved.
Yeah.
Commanding like he should be, but letting his
And
people do their thing.
was it last week or possibly the last couple of weeks when Kira has only had like one line
Yeah,
or
she's
two lines in the and ordinarily you look at that and think, sorry, sorry. Ordinarily you think, surely they were just to cut the character for that week because why pay the actor to come in and deliver a couple of lines?
contract, I
But
guess.
actually, it's what that would then do is it having them there, even just to deliver, even just to stand in the background of a scene, it it adds to the ensemble cast feel.
Yeah.
So it's not just about whether or not. Oh, it's not about how important the actor and the character is.
Mhm.
It's about them seeing them doing their day-to-day job on Deep Space Nine. So if someone walks into a room, finds I don't know, O'Brien or something, at work, closes the door and walks off again, that still counts because that's them doing their work, even though he's not said a line. And you think, oh God, they could have got that. Could have been anyone. They didn't need to pay.
I mean,
Colm Meaney
obviously it's
to do that.
contractual as well. The
Yeah,
contracts are they've got to appear in X amount of episodes, I guess. Although I know for a fact that Colm Meaney, because back then as well, he still had a decent film career at the time. So whenever he disappears, it's usually because he's basically worked. Because when, as I recall, the story goes, when they asked him to come onto DS9, because obviously he was only he wasn't even regular on Next Gen, it was just an recurring. Sometimes a lot, sometimes not. So when they asked him if he wanted to come on as a regular, he still had a fairly decent film career, especially in the UK. And he's basically like, okay, but here's the proviso. And the proviso is I'll only do X amount of episodes. I mean, no, not necessarily X amount of episodes a year, so much as every now and then I may have a film project coming up. So you're going to have to find a way to get me not in an episode, or we can record a few scenes earlier or something.
yeah,
And obviously, it gives them enough notice because obviously you get plenty of notice with films. They don't just make them off the hoof just like that. So that's why you occasionally Miles will just sort of disappear or be off visiting his mum or whatever, taking Keiko to visit her mother, 100-year-old gran or whatever it is. Yeah, because you don't really get that with any. Cause I was watching this episode, we was a fair way in, and I'm like, we haven't seen Odo yet, and then he turned up. I think I had like one scene in the entire
just had the one
episode.
scene beyond the bar hassling Rom.
Well, naturally.
And Bashir just had his one scene
With a
tending
bump.
to Quark
With a
after
bump, yeah.
did his wonderful
But
comedy.
that makes sense because again,
They're doing their job.
I like the ensemble nature of this. That the
Don't have
characters
to have
don't
them in the
have to,
background in every scene.
because they're off doing their thing, and it helps create the sense of a lived-in station of they're off doing their thing because they can't be hanging around ops all the time because they've got work to do.
Yeah,
and
so
I think that's fair.
If you're on the Enterprise and the Doctor, whether it's McCoy or Crusher or whoever, are constantly standing around in the background on the bridge. I used to think, well, if they're the ship's medical officer,
You got
surely
that a
they've got
lot
stuff
with
to be doing in the sick bay.
in the original series. McCoy's always on the bloody bridge. He's always there having a natter or something.
Exactly, and Nurse
with
Chapel's doing
Beverly,
all the hard work down in the sick bay.
not very well because you can't have shit.
But so not having that, or rather, that the Deep Space Nine doesn't lend itself to that because Bashir is only there on the control deck, as it were, when
in fairness, though,
he needs to be.
in fairness to TNG, as a rule, you really only ever saw Beverly on the bridge if there was a reason for her there. She was never there just to hang out.
All right, or check on Wesley.
Yeah. Well, even then, she never did that, actually. Most of the times we saw Beverly, unless it was a Beverly episode, she was doing her job in sick bay, or maybe having dinner with Picard.
Apologies, then, that I've misjudged, misrepresented Dr. Crusher.
Yes, she's no McCoy. She's no
fair
McCoy.
enough. Dr. Pulaski was probably just as bad as McCoy, but she was only there for
No,
one season.
no. Again, I mean, I love Pulaski. I think she's.
The,
I'm just.
I remember seeing her turn up because we would watch the episodes when they were shown each week
Yeah,
on
yeah.
BBC2 or whatever. Remember, she turned up and thinking, "Oh, that's a shame. I quite liked Doctor Crusher. Why have
I
they
like
written her
Beverly.
out?"
Don't get it
And I
wrong,
thought, oh, there
but
must have been some kind of fallout or something. I don't know, but then I was glad when Doctor Crusher came back and
well, the
Pulaski
story
went.
goes, she was Gates McFadden was very annoyed by what was going on behind the scenes with the execs, like
Right.
the attitudes to women and whatever, and the usual shit. Because she'd been in the industry for quite a while at this point. She's done
Hmm.
films and she's a choreographer. She choreographed Labyrinth and the Muppet
Oh,
movie.
really?
Yeah. Cheryl Gates
God.
McFadden. She was a choreographer first. She's been around, and she wasn't having it, so she basically essentially got sacked or walked out or something because she really clashed. And in the interim between season 2 and 3, um, they could see the Pulaski thing wasn't quite working the way they was hoping, I guess. And Patrick Stewart apparently um, made a big stink about it all and convinced them to ask her back. It's actually shown because in the first couple of episodes of season 3, I don't think I even noticed at the time, but now that somebody mentioned it, I'm like, I can sort of see it. Initially, the first couple of episodes, you can tell when you know that she's been written as Pulaski because they obviously had written scripts already with Pulaski in mind. Which
Right.
is ironic, really, now they've got the original again. So there's a few moments you're like, they can try to make it more Beverly, but you can see it's not quite there just yet. But it works. But yeah, that's one thing I mean, it's still Star Trek, so we're not talking out of school. That's the one thing about season 3 of Picard that kind of annoys me is that they brought so many old characters back, usually for no actual real reason, just fan service really. Only one was brought back that narratively made sense. But every time they brought like a female character, a legacy character, they always kept killing them off, which is a bit like naughty. But I was always like, come on, the one person you should bring back. I know she's got issues with her time on Star Trek, but that was a long time ago. That was like 34 years, 35 years, whatever. It's Diana Muldaur. She's still around. She's obviously very old. But how could you miss the chance not to somehow have her on screen, maybe just on a video conference so that she's not actually on set necessarily,
Yeah.
with an interaction between her and Beverly? I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? You'd think. Because it'd be like, that's sort of one of these things you kind of are waiting to see because the two doctors finally meet. I mean, another thing that really winds me up since we're on Picard. Wait till we get to watch it because we have to watch Picard season 3 in particular as part of this DS9 thing. It will make sense. Is finally they bring back the TNG cast. Fantastic. I mean, I mean, as a fan, it's great to see them anyway, regardless of the material they're given. And they had a little cameo of Wesley in the season 2 finale. Very weird cameo that comes out of nowhere. Narratively makes no actual sense. It's like, this is just so fan service. I mean, it's nice, but it looked like Will Wheaton just walked on set because it didn't look like they'd give him a particular costume. That's what that had a Wesley vibe to it. He's got his usual beard, his normal hairstyle. It's like you could have had a shave for a day and then grown your beard back, so you're playing Wesley, right? And that's fine, whatever. But then it's like, so now we've got season 3, and you've got Beverly and her and Picard. There's just huge plot details going on here, and not once do they think, "Oh, we'll get Will Wheaton back for this season," even for one freaking cameo scene. I mean, come on, what? It just baffles the head. Absolutely baffles the head. But anyway, so DS9, right?
Yeah. DS9. Yeah.
Who started
Rules of acquisition.
This? You started this with the doctors on the Enterprise.
Me, I know. It's all my fault. Yeah, apologies.
Viewer, blame Tim.
Blame me.
If you didn't want to hear my views on Picard.
Yeah. Put in the comments below all the things you blame me for. That's fine.
Tim. But yes, I like that about DS9. Like you say that all the characters are just usually just doing their jobs, and you don't
Doing
see
their
them all the
job,
time
yeah.
because it makes the station feel lived in, real.
Yes.
Because in real life, people are off doing their thing, not just going to be hanging around all the time, And yeah, it's a definite plus for the show, I think. Looking at the time, we're near an end here, so
I think we are winding down, aren't
we're
we?
winding
Definitely,
down.
we're winding down.
Yes.
We have had quite a bit to say about what was generally a very positive
Yeah.
episode.
Well,
So I
as the
think we've given
viewers,
the viewers some value.
as the viewers / listeners know,
Viewers, don't slash the listeners, please.
unless you're the same people, in which case you enjoy doing what you do.
Right? Slash away.
Who knows, right? What was I saying? Oh yeah, no.
Hmm?
What was I going to say? Oh yeah, as our long time viewer listeners, for we must have some by now. No, when it's a really good episode that we like, we don't generally have much to say at this point. I think that will change when it becomes more of a serialized show, because then you're going to have lots of layers ongoing. So even the episodes we really like, there's still going to be lots of different layers to play in. Because at this point, the show is usually a A-B plot thing, although not always, because there's not one this week.
Not
Was there
one
one
this
last
week.
week? Oh yeah, last week it was a stem boss.
Yes,
Wasn't
and they
it?
came together nicely. But the week before, there wasn't. Again, it's just all straight A. So,
and that works. But as the show goes, as it becomes more serialized, when the producers finally get to do what they want to do, and the networks let them do it, I think there would be a whole lot more to talk about.
Cool.
Even with episodes we like, because there'd just be a lot of ongoing nuanced stuff. And like I think I mentioned to you that, I think I mentioned this last week possibly, how so many characters, not last week, before with Garrett when he appeared, how a lot of these slowly recurring characters that they're introducing bit by bit end up coming to a point, I'm going to say around season 4 actually, maybe 5, but not that far away really, where they may as well be bloody regulars. There's just so many of them, which not a bad thing because it creates a sense of reality as well, because loads across the station, why wouldn't they be bumping each other all the time? But they never, again, like now, they're never just doing nothing. They're obviously living there and doing what they should be doing. But yeah, it'd be good because it creates so many layers and so many points to discuss, with these different characters as they evolve and become much more complicated, and the stories become much more complicated. But yeah, so good episode.
Indeed.
Fun episode. Enjoyable one.
Indeed.
That's pretty much my bottom line.
That's your bottom line.
That's my bottom line.
My bottom line is also a fun episode. Very enjoyable. Nice moments of comedy. Not forced comedy, but just very natural, character-driven comedy. Which is always the best kind, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. And so...
Yes?
That brings us to the end, doesn't it?
Not quite.
Not quite?
No, because it's a question you haven't asked me yet. Remember,
what have we got next week, Andy?
Hey, you forgot to ask me this the other week, didn't you?
I did, probably.
You're like, I forgot to ask you, bugger.
I can't remember that far back. What have we got next week?
What one was it? I think it was the Kardashians episode. I think the week before that we had Maddie here, and you forgot to ask. What's next week? Which is good, because if I just said it's called Kardashians, all right then.
Yeah, that's what it says on the tin. Yeah.
Of course it is. But yeah, so next week we have Necessary Evil.
Do we indeed? Necessary Evil. Gosh.
What could that possibly say to you? Something's evil.
Sounds like it's going to be a dilemma for someone.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I know. I always get confused with a different episode.
Right.
Because it's another one that's sort of a sequel, kind of-ish. Not really, but...
Unnecessary Evil?
No, what is it? I think it's called... I can't remember. It's one of those poetic type of episode titles. But yeah, but when we get to it, I won't tell you in advance.
No, please don't.
When you watch it, you're like, oh, this is kind of a sequel to, oh, this is the one you're on about. This is the one I was on about. It's very obvious when we get there.
Good.
It's very obvious. But yeah, so I think next one, we may well have quite a bit to discuss on it, actually.
Okay.
It's not going to be a not like episode. You definitely. I have no doubt you're going to like it a lot because the lead character of this you would definitely enjoy. And
Good.
yeah,
Right.
there's some
There we
definite.
are then.
Here we are. There we
Yes.
are.
So, viewer, watcher, listener, join us next week for some necessary evil.
Indeed.
In the meantime, we have been the Replimat. You can contact us if you wish, if you desire, if you urge, on all of the usual social media platforms that we occupy. Andy will, I'm sure, put the details below the video.
Below the video, in the description on Spotify. Yep.
That's the one. Yes.
For we're on Spotify as well.
All these things I don't know about, but yes.
He just watched the episode. He doesn't do anything else.
Indeed, and yes. So please feel free to comment and tell us stuff, and just if you don't like it, tell us. If you do like it, tell us, and then that makes us. We'll then know if we're just sort of shouting into the ether, or if we're connecting with you.
If we're just talking into the wormhole.
Indeed. So yes, yeah. We don't want to see Andy talking into his wormhole. That's for sure. So until then, I've been Tim.
And I've been disgusted.
And that's my alarm.
I've been Andy. The horribly insulted one.
Yes, and so we will see you next time. Oh, here's
Bye-bye, Duggan!